Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often, when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand. I'm here with Carl Forehand, and we are continuing his series from his latest book, Campfires in the Desert, a deconstruction travel guide. And so we are to the chapter called Learn to Celebrate Yourself. So my first question is going to be, why is it important to celebrate ourselves?
I think we put a lot of hard work into the things we do. We have a lot of intention. We sacrifice things to accomplish things.
Mm-hmm.
We need, I think, that to some degree, that whatever the chemical is that's released
Mm-hmm.
when we get praise, when we get recognition for doing what we do, but also just, our self-esteem, or
Mm-hmm.
lots of things are tied up in that.
Right.
So everything's not about the ego, but, we put some hard work into most things we do, especially, and a lot of them don't turn out well. But, if we don't take time to reflect and appreciate what happened and how we grew and how we accomplished and how we sacrificed and how we worked hard, I think it can become like a cycle.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, like for me, and you know this very well, for me, I finished one project and started another. I finished the puzzle last night, and today we glued it and started another one.
You started another one,
Yeah.
right? I didn't really
Which,
help you too much.
puzzles for me are kind of an ongoing therapy, really, so but it does, give me a sense of satisfaction. I think is what I said today,
Yeah.
and just recognizing the fact that I stuck at it long enough to finish a 1,000-piece puzzle.
Right. It's an accomplishment.
And kind of at least reflect on that. Maybe I can start another puzzle, but at the same time, just reflect on that, reflect on how hard it was and the difficulty I had, and I stuck to it. I did a little every day until I got it done. So I think those things have to be celebrated, to close one door to open others.
Right.
Or we're just waiting on someone to give us enough praise or recognize it as significant. But in general, it's just that I think we need to close that in our body, kind of have a little celebration. You do that sometimes at work when you finish projects. You do it, in your life when you get to another birthday.
Yeah.
We're really not celebrating anything on a birthday except that we made it another year, right? And so I think we should.
Yeah.
Right?
What makes it hard to celebrate ourselves, or what makes us hesitant to celebrate ourselves?
And for me, I think one of the things was that it was the pride thing was drummed into us. That don't be too proud. It's good that you accomplished that. And they might have even said, "I'm proud of you," but don't be too proud.
Right.
Don't give the devil a foothold.
Mm.
Don't. It was pretty strongly. If you were arrogant or prideful, you might even get physically punished. You might get um, things taken away from you. So early on in life, we just weren't allowed to be proud of ourselves enough. And so
Yeah.
I think that all that stuff leads to it.
You say in the first paragraph of this chapter, the definitions of pride and confidence got tangled up in my ego and false humility.
Yeah.
So that's a lot there. I mean, can you
Yeah.
break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah. So you have pride and confidence. So confidence is not pride, not necessarily pride, right?
Mhm.
And pride is not necessarily a bad word,
Mhm.
right? I'm proud of you. I'm
Mhm.
proud of my children.
Mhm.
I'm proud of what we all did as a team. Why can't I be proud of myself?
Mhm.
So pride's not necessarily a bad thing. Confidence is a good thing.
Mhm.
Overconfidence might be dangerous, right? If I think I can do anything, I might hurt myself,
Right.
right?
Right.
I can't jump large buildings in a single bound. You
Yeah.
can't jump off my house. I could have all the confidence in the world, but I'm probably going to break my legs.
Mhm.
So all that kind of gets tangled up.
Mhm.
And then you have ego. And I think we're going to talk about false humility later.
Yeah.
Ego is also a thing that we should be developed. It's our identity. It's our
Mhm.
first half of life. It's
Mhm.
that building a career. It's, making a life for yourself, reaching your dreams, figuring out who you are. All that's tied up in the
Mhm.
ego,
Right.
and not necessarily anything bad with that, but an ego kind of out of control, right,
Mhm.
can do dangerous
Sure.
things.
Sure.
So yeah, all that got mixed up for me, I think,
Yeah, and
somewhere along the way.
a lot of it too is, just certain words like pride or being proud. Um, I put that in the same category as like grace. I think those words like have been hijacked by the religious community,
Hmm.
right? As bad things. But like we talk a lot about having grace for ourselves, having grace for other people because we're learning and we're growing. Um, but sometimes the word grace still feels cringy because it was it was hijacked in church, right? Um, Same thing with pride or being proud of yourself, that instead of taking the circumstances into consideration, we just think, oh, you're proud, you're haughty, you think you're better than everybody else. And that's not necessarily the case, but that's kind of the messaging that, we got within, our denomination of choice within the religious organization. And,
I,
there's just so many words like that that I feel have been hijacked and they still feel a little cringy to me. I'm learning to use them in the right context without like being self-deprecating, I guess, without thinking there's something wrong with me for being proud or to want to celebrate something. It's one of my accomplishments.
and humility and respect for authority oftentimes gets pushed to the limit of, well, that means you're not just bowing or submitting or, you know, which submitting gets kind of out of hand also, but it's not just having respect or a humbleness
Hmm.
about you. It's face down. It's laying on the ground as low as I can go. I am nothing.
Right.
I'm nothing without God. Even I am nothing without God is, I think, terrible theology
Mm.
because you are something
Mm.
in and of yourself.
Yeah.
If you believe in God, maybe you believe that's extra, but you're not nothing without God.
Mm.
Um, there is nothing good in me is a song
Yeah.
we used to sing. I don't think we ever sang it, but it is a
Oh,
song.
oh,
We might
we
have.
might have.
Yeah.
We might
But
have.
it's just kind of in those, well, you know, if sorrow, abjectness is good, then we think, well, more extreme versions of that would be even better.
Mm.
If I'm kind of to bow my head and, think about my weaknesses or whatever, that's good. Then if I go to the extreme, that must be better, right?
Mm.
So you see people wailing and crying, and if they're traumatized, if they're hurting, I understand. But if they're just trying to get God's attention,
Mm.
why should we have to do that? So,
Well, and I'm not sure I want to worship a God that would require that
yeah,
from me.
or that accepts it, or that
Right.
wouldn't pick you up and go, no, You
Yeah.
are valuable.
Yeah, I created you.
Hmm.
You're created in my image.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it gets off base and then it gets really off base.
Yeah. And so you talk about organizations celebrate themselves. So give me an example of that. So, like, if I'm thinking, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the church, right? It could be
Hmm.
any organization.
Yeah, so churches have, certain year anniversaries. They
Mhm.
they celebrate
We
themselves.
celebrated, sorry, I'm interrupting. We celebrated when we even got asked back to one of our churches because they paid off their
Paid off the loan,
mortgage.
yeah.
And okay, sorry, I didn't
And
mean to
that
interrupt
was
you. Go
that
ahead.
was pretty cool because we had kind of started that building campaign
Mhm.
and built the church actually.
Right,
So,
right.
but it gets tedious. It takes up all the time in the service. You're going to thank everybody that would help because you get so much volunteer labor
Hmm.
and help. And you kind of want to promote that idea, and churches wouldn't admit this, but you kind of want to promote that idea of they feel better by serving, they feel better by giving you their volunteer labor. And so you can take advantage of that, and sometimes even more than you should,
Hmm.
right? And then when we celebrate, we either celebrate the pastor, we're
Hmm.
so good because of this guy, or we're just good and we celebrate ourselves. It's, you know, the organization of IBM or any other company,
Uh-huh.
Xerox or whoever.
Right.
I'm talking about old companies now,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Any company like Ford or Buick or any of those things, General Motors,
Hmm.
they celebrate themselves. They celebrate the organization. And of
That's
course,
part of their commercials sometimes. Like,
mhm,
we won the JD Power Award or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes give a little bit of a shout out to a few people
Mm-hmm.
but they just don't have time to thank everybody in the company.
Mm-hmm.
With volunteer labor, it's even more complex than that. And there's lots of people helping. Um, and sometimes they don't want recognition, but they celebrate themselves and they tend to punish you for celebrating.
Mm.
There's humility, there's shame, there's, you know, outing when you are too prideful, when you think too much of yourself, or when you celebrate too much,
Right.
whatever
Right.
that is.
Hmm. Yeah. As you were talking, it's like I just kept thinking to myself, even within my organizations being the school, I've won a couple of Teacher of the Year awards and things like that. And it's really like hard, even like if my principal calls me in one on one for my end of the year evaluation, and he's just like, yeah, I gave you high marks, and this is what you're really doing well, and X, Y, and Z. It's uncomfortable for me. It's uncomfortable because for so long, you know, to think that, you know what, I might be actually halfway decent at my job,
Mhm.
um, was a sign of ego, was like, you be careful there, slippery slope kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of it was wrapped up in for me in this. I'm the story with me is that my parents told me that when people came over to visit, I hid under the coffee table.
Yeah.
I was that shy and
Hmm.
that whatever, and I don't know where that comes from or how it originated.
Hmm.
But then, so when Christianity offered, the Lord exalts those who are humbled and humbles those who are exalted. And
Right.
so that was kind of a standard mantra
Hmm.
they were saying. And in a way that worked out good for me because I'm already shy and I'm
Hmm.
already like not wanting to celebrate. And so when when they say that, then someone can compliment me and I can immediately say, well, all glory goes to God.
Right.
Or I can immediately say, it wasn't really me, it was God.
Right.
And, I don't want to be proud. So,
Hmm.
not that big a deal. I just doing my best, so you downplay it.
Hmm.
And that's a false humility. right?
Right. Yeah. Which
Which,
is the next section you talk about in this chapter is
yeah,
that false humility.
yeah. I think false humility is a sense of pride. Um, Even my self-consciousness and my um, shyness. I especially realized my shyness was a sense of pride because who are you thinking about um, when you're acting that way? When you um, are shy, I know there's introverts and extroverts, but when you decide I'm not going to speak up, I don't want to talk, I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
say anything, I don't want to, who are you thinking about?
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking about someone else, you're thinking about yourself
Mm-hmm.
and you're protecting yourself and yeah, there may be trauma and all kinds of things wrapped up in that, and there may be reasons for that,
Mm-hmm.
but it can get to be where we just say, well, I don't want any attention. I don't want any attention. So I just keep volunteering for the church and working my ass off for them. And then when good things happen, they mention it briefly, and then they take credit for it at their regional meetings, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's just like it seems well like it's better for me because I'm shy anyhow and I'm an introvert. So I'll just play this off as humility, and therefore people will compliment me for that. And I don't have to celebrate myself. Other people will be filling that role, hopefully, because I'm so humble.
Is that what you mean in the sentence that I underlined in the book? You said this tendency to withhold my wants, needs, and concerns was perceived as humility, and once I recognized it, I leveraged it to my advantage. Is that kind of what you're talking about there?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, there's a lot of different parts to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just think, oh, as long as I'm this way, I'm just going to keep being the way I'm not going to try to get better. I'm not going to try to learn to celebrate rightly and celebrate even if people don't agree with me celebrating. But it got to the point where when I talked to my therapist and said, yeah, I've written some books, and in fact, we've written at least 8 in 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple others we contribute to or whatever. But then you get to the point where you go, yeah, I read a lot of books, and people call me prolific
Mm-hmm.
because I put a lot out.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, is that, I don't know if that's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm I'm anxious about that and going, well, but the latest one has one review. Why does it have one review? And it's so crazy that no one's reviewed it yet. I know people have read it, and I know, uh, or they have it and they're not reading it,
Mm-hmm.
and all those things. And you wrestle around those things. And she said, but you wrote a book. And I said, yeah, I wrote a book and blah, blah, blah. And she said, but you wrote a book. And not only that, the last few we published and ourselves
Mm-hmm.
laid them out, went through all of that process, did the cover design.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's probably not perfect, but we did a good job, and they're readable, they're good,
Yep.
put good stuff in them,
Mm-hmm.
but never really, I don't think, celebrated it well. Um, we just don't like to do that. We just like to move on.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. It's kind of like you're when you were talking about the puzzle, right?
Hmm.
You like even writing your books. You'd write a book, maybe give it about a month, and then you're like, okay, it's time to move on to the next
Hmm.
project.
Yeah.
And in that month time, it wouldn't say that you took time to celebrate. You were taking time to market and kind of do work,
Hmm.
right? You weren't even taking time then to celebrate. And one of your books like earned an award,
Hmm.
and I'm not even sure we really celebrated that. But I don't know, maybe you did, but I think about we watch a lot of women's sports and, we sometimes see that with certain players, that they want to give all the glory to God. And, we've had this conversation before where it's just like, I mean, that is fine to a point because if that's your faith and you want to like give some credit to God, that's fine. But, and I think we've talked about this on a podcast before, but it's like you're totally dismissing the amount of sacrifice you, your family,
Parents.
your parents have made for you to get to the professional level that you are at.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we never had our kids go to, be in a, what are they called? Like a traveling team or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we know people that have done that, and it's expensive. I mean,
And hundreds
you
of dollars
buy
every weekend. Yeah.
probably
During the
more than
season.
that
Yeah.
because couple $100 just for a hotel room,
Right. Then
not to
there's
mention the
fees and
fees
all
and
that stuff.
the travel and the
Yeah.
gas and all that. I mean, these are like people sacrifice certain things in their life so that they can give this opportunity to their child. And it doesn't have to be to that extent. It can be, we, like I said, we didn't do that, but we did sacrifice things every now and then so that our girls could, or our kids, not just our girls, but, I just remember like them being in cheerleading and, those kind of things cost money. And so maybe we did without something we really wanted so that they could have what they wanted in cheerleading or, even let's say going to college, you know?
Yeah. But the fourth man in the fire, whatever that is, and I know what the fourth man in the fire is. It's, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, but there's a fourth man in the fire, supposedly it represents Jesus. And so they get on that kick and they say, it's great, you just won. And then they say, well, yeah, because we had the fourth man in the fire.
Mm,
Well, the other team didn't have the fourth man in the fire, I guess.
yeah.
And when you lost and didn't get to go to the finals last year in softball,
Hmm.
I asked people that online and they didn't have an answer for it
Hmm.
really, or they had weird answers that didn't make any sense. And they said, well, where was the fourth man this week? Because you guys lost out.
Right.
And even though it was my team, I was glad they lost because they're just and see it's still almost it's a pride it's worse pride than saying, yeah, I'm really proud of myself. Just like Snoop said, you know one time when he got an award, he said, I want to thank myself for all
Yeah.
the work I put in myself and all the
Right.
sacrifices I've made for
Mhm.
myself, and so on and so forth. It's a big long speech,
Yeah.
and only the way that he could do it.
Hmm.
But when you win, and then you say, "Well, we got the fourth man in the fire. We have this special relationship with God, essentially, that gives us an advantage." That's prideful.
I was gonna say that to me sounds
Yeah,
incredibly prideful.
yeah, but you're
Like
masking it.
we've got this and you don't have it, so
But you're
there.
masking it in religiosity
Mm,
and religious language, and
yeah.
so you're avoiding celebrating, but at the same time you're very prideful and you're
Hmm.
not acknowledging how hard you worked and giving yourself credit, and you're going to have to do therapy later because of that. you
Hmm.
know um, I think when your coworkers, and that's the thing, that person that was saying that a lot, the pitcher,
Hmm.
um, she would think her team, but when she says, well, we had the fourth man in the fire. Well, wait, wasn't it your teammates that came through for you? Wasn't it,
Yeah.
didn't you put a lot of effort and skill into this?
Right.
Anyway, we
And
could go on and
just,
on about
yeah, I
that.
know. And I go back to that, you can't give God all the credit for your skill.
Yeah.
You put in some hard work. I mean, I'm not saying like you can't acknowledge him, but to give him all the honor and the glory, I'm
Not unless
like,
you blame him when you lose.
so you just
You
sat at
have to
home.
blame him when you lose if you give
True.
him credit when you
Yeah.
win. Because
Talk about that
otherwise,
because that's like a big
yeah, it's a
thing
big
right now.
theme. It's a
Hmm.
big theme in all of us. Because
Hmm.
if you, um, every time something good happens, you give all credit to God. And anytime something bad happens, you blame it on yourself.
Right.
You say, I must not have done enough.
Hmm.
I must not have said my prayers right, or I must not have
Hmm.
been obedient enough, or maybe it's because I ate that chocolate the other night, or whatever. You know, you're just that's that's a like a ticket to therapy that you're gonna have to
Yeah.
do later, because you can't just say, well, anytime something good happens, it just means that I can make up a God, right, and put a narrative around him. Well, if we don't understand him, it's our fault. We can't understand God because
Hmm.
we're not as near as cool as he is. But when there's a something that's exciting or makes us happy, then all praise goes to God for that because I understand that and he did that, I think, at least in my
Hmm.
narrative.
Hmm.
But then also as my life progresses, well, something good happens. Thank you, God. God,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that kind of almost triggers us. And but then
There's so much to unpack there, really.
yeah, but then when something goes wrong or you didn't do as good as you
Hmm.
hoped you would do, or things don't turn out like you wanted to, or maybe someone gets sick
Hmm.
or whatever, well, I wonder if this is my fault.
Right.
Or sure, or then we blame it on other people sometimes instead of
Sometimes.
ourselves,
Yeah.
you know.
I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there because it is really like, you know, twisted and a mind F. Don't say the word, but
Yeah.
it really is because and the amount of, mental gymnastics that you have to do to make it make sense.
Hmm.
So you talk about, celebrate yourself, and we've talked about that, some. Then you go into not just the significant. So, what do you mean by not just the significant?
Well, I think what I mean is that when we say we're kind of brainwashed by religion a lot too. We want to do something significant. We want to
Mm.
remember we're watching the second season of Shiny Happy People,
Uh-huh.
and it's talking about the cult of
Teen
teeny
mania
mania and all that stuff,
and acquire the
fire
fire.
the fire and all
Be
this.
ready, y'all. Like if you watch that,
It is,
just be ready to be traumatized. And like I was thinking we sent our kids to stuff like that. And Carl kept saying, no, that was in the 90s. I'm like, oh yeah, our kids were born in the 90s. Okay.
yeah,
So, but I mean, just it was a little trigger, not a little, it was quite triggering to me.
yeah. So that gets teenagers all fired up about we're in a holy war for
Mm.
God. And what I could tell, they're not doing anything except raising money so they can go on mission trips to try to convince people that barely speak English or don't even speak English to become Christians, right? So it's a holy war, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they don't even know what they're doing, but then they go on a year retreat.
Hmm.
It's not a retreat because it comes like a boot camp,
Right.
like a simulated
And they pay their own
SEALs
money
camp.
to go
Yeah.
through it.
And they have to pay for that. They have to fundraise and raise all kinds of money,
Mm.
raise money to go on the trips. And uh, most of them were traumatized before it totally collapsed eventually. But that's the idea. We don't want to just do something, and I get caught in that trap also of saying I want to do something significant. I want to change the world. I want to make, I want people to look and go, well, he made a great impact on
Mhm.
this, instead of doing what you're able in the place that you are.
Mhm.
Thinking globally, but acting locally.
Yeah.
But somehow, in Christianity, you get that message of we want to it's always want to impact the world. It's not ever Jesus said love your neighbor.
Hmm.
uh that's local,
Hmm.
right? Affect the place that you are. Be a
Yeah.
good example at work. Don't be a jerk at work.
Hmm.
um and change your workplace, change your family tree. um do those kind of things, that but we're just kind of conditioned to think it's got to be significant, it's got to be big. And so I think that's what goes on with my books, instead of like cherishing each one and realizing that I put something out there that I'm mostly proud of,
Hmm.
right? Every once in a while I think I could have done better, but just because a million people don't buy it doesn't mean it wasn't worth doing,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And doesn't mean it wasn't significant,
Right.
right?
It kind of like, as you were talking, I'm thinking, So what is the definition of significance? And I don't, yeah, like, wouldn't that be significant? Is like to make sure, like to focus on, what's in your own home, to focus on what's in your own classroom. I mean, I get caught in that trap. We got caught, or I will speak for myself, but I feel like we both got caught in that trap, earlier this summer when we were doing a lot of learning with ATN, Attachment and Trauma Network, and various learning experiences that we were going through. It was almost so overwhelming. Like, what I'm doing with that one student is not enough. I've got to take this out
Mhm.
to the world. That's what will be significant. And
Right.
it's like, why is that one child not significant?
Right. There's only so many slots for those things.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so many speakers that can speak at a conference. There's only so many big pastors. Most pastors are little pastors in
Mm-hmm.
terms of congregation size. And I started to realize some of that earlier in life, but it still is a hard message to get through to our subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes it's just that what you do is significant. Recovering from a stroke is significant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I totally get all my abilities back,
Mm-hmm.
but it means what's significant is that I kept going
Right.
today instead
Mm-hmm.
of giving up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, that just kind of hit me, and I think that's a mentality that I need to try to remember more. It's funny because, like, when we're talking about celebration, you know, we don't celebrate the quote unquote small victories like with that one student any more than, like, if I were to go out and make some sort of significant air quotes impact, I wouldn't be able to celebrate that either. It just seems like celebrating yourself, your accomplishments, is just kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
I mean, coming from a religious organizational standpoint. I mean, it may not be hard for some people, but I go back to some of the things that you were saying earlier where, you know, I know in my parents' generation, and I believe this is true with, your parents as well, like, children were to be seen and not heard. So anything you had to say or contribute was insignificant. You just, you are here, you just need to know your place, you just need to be quiet. And I feel like that kind of bled over to our generation. And I'm just curious if our kids' generation feels that sense of insignificance, like we can't celebrate our accomplishments, you
Yeah.
know?
And like most accomplishments that children make, parents, I think, are proud most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they recognize it. But then they usually follow it up with, "This is how you could do it better, a little better." And it starts to give off that impression of it's never going to be good enough. And
Mm,
and for a lot of us, that's what it kind of feels like.
mm-hmm.
I think my mother used to say, "My kids are going to do something significant." What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, what's
Mm,
significant, and when
right.
do I get there, and how do I know
How
when
do
I
you know?
get there, and what do I reward myself with when I do?
Mm-hmm.
I
Or
think
do I reward myself?
I think religions and families kind of promote that. You can never be perfect, but keep trying to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we know when we get there, is anybody going to give me a badge for doing that or
Mm-hmm.
something? But I think, a proper approach, and this is just me, but this is just the way I would say it to myself is when people ask me anymore, how you doing? I say, I'm doing the best I can. Because if I'm doing the best I can and that's not good enough for you, then F you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what you think anymore. It's uh, I decided what I was going to attempt today, and I attempted it, and I did my best,
Mm-hmm.
and that's got to be good enough,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then even maybe do a little celebration dance inside and say, well, I did the best I could today. I got that done. I wanted to do that, and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's not good enough for you, then maybe that's your something you ought to look into and see why it affects you that way.
I also think, though, that when we don't take time to celebrate what we feel is significant for us to celebrate, then there are times where, you know, maybe we don't want to do anything. We just want to rest for the day. And you almost feel like, well, that's not significant enough, like I can't do, like, that's not worth celebrating. But it is, I mean, if you take a day just to rest and replenish and rejuvenate, that's just to me as significant as if I go out and, weed the entire garden or, do something at work that, is meaningful.
Yeah. And religion also kind of conditions you that if you spent time on yourself, that's selfish. Um, and I disagree,
Mm,
because sometimes just to rest,
mm-hmm,
right? On vacation, a lot of things were going on vacation, but and I'd walk a half a mile and got that completed that goal. But then
mm-hmm,
the next day, my body was in pain,
mm-hmm.
and I was, it's hard to explain how kind of that physical part of recovering from a stroke is also emotional. It's
Mm-hmm.
also something else besides just physical tiredness, right? But it still requires to maybe say, well, that's good that I did that, and I'm going to celebrate by taking a nap or
Yeah.
getting some good nutrition the next day and
Or
hydrate and
just take the next day off
just
or
yeah,
whatever.
just take care of
Yeah.
yourself and
Right.
recuperate.
Mm-hmm.
And so sleep and rest and not pushing yourself as hard sometimes is the best thing you can do for
Yeah.
yourself and a good way to
Absolutely.
celebrate.
So you know that I suffer with imposter syndrome, like really bad. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But how do you think lack of celebrating or feeling worthy of celebrating can lead to imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I mean it's just my gut reaction, but my gut reaction says usually it's because we're trying to be someone else. You
That
know,
is true.
if I say present a speech
Mm-hmm.
or write a book
Mm-hmm.
or do something that's my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm delivering it, then the most important thing is that I'm authentic and I do it like I would do it,
Right.
and that I bring the qualifications that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't try to borrow from someone else's credibility.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I may quote other people and things like that, but basically, I'm saying this is how I feel. This is what I hope you understand from what I'm saying, and it's your choice, really, whether you accept that or not, and
Mm-hmm.
whether you think I'm great or don't think I'm not. Yeah, I'm great.
Right.
That's up to you. And so I don't know how to totally get rid of imposter syndrome, but all of us struggle with it to some degree or another.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I think that that's a lot of my issue is that I see great
But let me
pers
say real quick before I forget, just but imposter syndrome by definition means you're you're pretending to be someone
Oh
else.
yeah.
So really, imposter syndrome is real.
Mm.
If you're feeling it deeply, it's because you really do want to be like the image you have of how that
Right.
should be done, and usually it's based on someone else.
Right.
So, uh, being authentic, if I'm really authentic, then I'm only uh, imposturing. What's the word there? I'm only uh,
Pretending.
I'm only like mimicking myself, right? So that's
Mm.
authentic and that's real, and
Mm-hmm.
I have the right to do that, right? I have the right to say how I feel and be who I am
Mm-hmm.
and do the best I can, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we get into that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of mine is like when I see a really great presenter and I mean, there's a possible opportunity that I will be presenting something in November and I mean, I'm just like, but I'm not that good. I'm not as good as so and so,
Yeah.
and so I have been doing a lot of internal self-talk where it's like you don't have to be, you're not them, so you don't have to be them. But
Mhm.
there's also that other aspect of it where, people are going to compare you to someone that maybe they have heard on the same topic, let's say, and they are going to think, well, I kind of preferred so and so because they were a little more dynamic or a little more flashy or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so that can kind of feed into my insecurity and lack of wanting to celebrate, you know.
And all that kind of collapses on itself. And then
Mm,
all that trauma and nervousness and everything comes up at once. And I experienced that to some degree the other day when I was presenting at the library,
mm,
just in front of 6 or 8 older ladies,
mm.
and our daughter and
Yeah.
you and the library person there
Mhm.
and so on. And it went fairly well, but I was still nervous as heck. And
Oh, yeah. I mean, but public speaking is one of those things that makes most people feel anxious.
really, the only way I got better was to do it every week for
Hmm.
20 years,
Yeah.
and that
I mean,
I think that has something to do with it.
yeah, yeah. But, you know, irregardless, I mean, going back to what you said, the fact that maybe you aren't speaking in the same way, speaking about the same things, but the fact that you got up and spoke is worth celebrating.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And we certainly celebrate you as audience members. Please go out and get the book. There's some cheap ways to get the book. What is it? The ebook is 99 cents.
Uh-huh.
The audiobook is 5.99 and the book is 9.99.
Hmm.
So they're pretty cheap. And different ways to access it. I like to buy the book and read and have the audio playing while
Hmm.
I'm reading it. So
I got the audio. I didn't have a credit, but I got it for free. So maybe that
yeah,
was a
we're
fluke,
we're
maybe
Prime
not.
members and stuff.
Yeah.
So
So maybe
yeah,
we were, so if you're a Prime member, maybe you'll get it for free.
but
I
we
can't promise you, but
we
maybe.
do celebrate you, and we're trying to learn to celebrate ourselves. We ask you, as always, to be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace. We'll see you later. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.